Okay, so we're going to PLURP Daniel chapter 1. PLURP is pray, look, understand, respond, and pray again. It's a Bible study tool. So I'm going to read to you Daniel chapter 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate, and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, of the tribe of Judah, and the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food, or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favour and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink. For why should he see that you are in worse condition than the youths who are of your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king. Then Daniel said to the steward from whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, test your servant for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter, and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and among all of them none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in all his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the 1st year of King Cyrus. Alright, so we're going to look. So first of all, we're going to pray. Plurping. We're going to pray. Father, thank you for this Bible. Thank you for this story. Thank you that you show us your character and what it is to be the people of God through people like Daniel and their story. Thank you so much that this is recorded for us, that we can see your amazing works throughout the history. Please help us to understand what it is you're showing us in this. Amen. So, when, where, who, and what? These are your 4 looking questions. So I'm going to read through verse by verse now, and we're going to pop things into each of these categories. So in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. So we've got 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. We've got Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. So we've got vessels from the house of God, big G, sorry, in Jerusalem, that go to the house of the Babylonian gods. in Shinar. And placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. So we have here Israelites. And what do we know about them? I'm not going to write everything down, but they were youths, no blemish, understanding. And they were to be taught Babylonian. So they would have had the language of the Babylonians, which is Aramaean. They would have been taught their economics, their politics, their way of thinking. They would have made them as Babylonian as possible. Okay, the king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of the time they would stand before the king. So 3 years educated. Then they were going to stand before the king. They had the king's food and wine. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah, and the chief of the eunuchs gave them names. So these are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And he gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar, Hananiah he called Shadrach, Mishael he called Meshach, and Azariah he called Abednego. So this is a change of names to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Oh dear, I keep clicking that. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. So, didn't want to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favour and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. Favour. I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink, for why should he see that you were in worse condition than the youths who are of your own age? So you would endanger my head with the king. Then Daniel said to this steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, test your servant for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. So he has a steward, and they are setting up between them a 10-day test of vegetable and water. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away the food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables. So from vegetables they became fat and good appearance. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king spoke with them. So God's given them wisdom, learning, skill, and dreams. Stood before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king spoke with them, and among all of them none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better. and all the magicians and enchanters that were in all his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. Okay, so we've done our looking. We've got things in when, where, who, and what. And now we're going to understand what's going on. So let's just have a look at that when, just to begin with. So 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and we've got 3 years educated. Now I think the fact that we've got these numbers repeated is probably deliberate. So 3 years. The education is kind of like a test, really, for Daniel, because at the end of it, he's going to stand before the king. And the king's going to judge him. So it's judgment, really. And Daniel stands before Nebuchadnezzar, found 10 times better than all the rest. Jehoiakim, it's been tested for 3 years. He's had 3 years to be able to be king of Judah and to see, is he going to turn towards Yahweh or not? And at the end of 3 years, if he stood in the judgment of Yahweh, standing before the king, he is found not worthy to be king, and so the whole nation taken into exile. So those 3 years, I think, are connected, that Jehoiakim's had 3 years to be tested and didn't do well. Daniel's had 3 years to be tested, did well. So then the second number that is repeated is 10. So 10-day test, and then he's found to be 10 times better. And what's God telling us through this? I think it's that if you trust in God, God gives favor. Now, it doesn't mean that Daniel's life was all hunky-dory from there on in and nothing went wrong. I mean, he comes across some serious challenges, but he has the favor of God. It's the favor of God on him. In the where, you've got these 2 kingdoms. It's the battle of the kingdoms. It's like Judah versus Babylon, and Babylon seems like it's the greater kingdom, except that you've got this little line at the end there. Daniel was there until the 1st year of King Cyrus. Now, actually, Daniel was there longer than just the 1st year of King Cyrus. If you read on in the book, I think it's chapter 9, where he says, in the 2nd year of King Cyrus, God gave him a dream. So he's in the king's court, at least a few years into Cyrus's reign. But I think the point here is that Daniel outlives the Babylonian kingdom. That actually you'll see as we go through the book that Nebuchadnezzar is king, and then Belshazzar is king, and then the Medes and Persians come in, and who's stuck around? Not the kings, but Daniel stuck around because Daniel keeps trusting God. So you've got the king of Judah, you've got the king of Babylon. Oh, I don't know quite how I managed to do that. We're back. Yes, you've got these 2 kingdoms, Judah, Babylon, but actually it's Yahweh who is king. And those who trust in Yahweh outlive them all. So that's the eternal kingdom. And you'll see that theme get developed through the book. So in the who, we've got Nebuchadnezzar. We've already said he's the king. He seems like he's besieged Jerusalem. He's overtaken God's people, but actually we'll come to see that God is still in control. Then you've got Ashpenaz, who's under him, and the steward who's under Ashpenaz. So this authority, who has authority over who? Nebuchadnezzar has authority over Ashpenaz. Ashpenaz fears the king, Nebuchadnezzar. Ashpenaz has authority over the steward, but Daniel, who's he looking to as his highest authority? Daniel's highest authority is God. It doesn't matter where he is, whether he is in Jerusalem or he is in Babylon, his highest authority is God. And actually Daniel, the name Daniel means God is my judge. That doesn't change where he is. The same for us when we're here, I'm in the UK, and the culture around me does not worship Jesus, but I'm going to worship Jesus because God is my judge, and no matter where I am, he's my highest authority. And there's a connection here between the vessels dedicated to the Lord, and these people that have been taken out. So these vessels, it's like a picture of who these people are. These people are dedicated to the Lord. They were supposed to be there for the worship and honor of the Lord, but those that actually went against God, that is what will cause the whole nation to go into exile. And yet you have these few treasures, these people like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who are still dedicated to the Lord despite being in Babylon. And that dedication really carries him through. The whole book is just, he is dedicated to the Lord. God is his judge from beginning to end. So then you have this, the real story revolves around this food. This is the conflict. Whose food am I going to eat? Am I going to go against all the kosher laws of the Jews, all of the laws that Yahweh has handed down, and go with the king because I'm in this culture and they're trying to make me as Babylonian as possible, even changing my name to become Babylonian? Or am I going to trust God and actually, even if I can't find kosher meat around, all I can get is fruit, is vegetables? I'd rather do that and not dishonor God than just say, oh, it's too difficult to honor God in this culture. I'll go with the king's food. Daniel is gutsy here, and he's only young. He's a youth. He's probably a teenager, and he trusts God. He just trusts God. Doesn't want to defile himself. He refuses to be defiled, but he also has wisdom about it. Doesn't just sort of say, no, I'm not going to do that, just in your face, kind of Ashpenaz. He says, look, test me, see what happens. 10 days and then see what happens. So he really is salt and light. He's saying, I'm living by God's law, and he's doing it with love. He's doing it with respect. He's doing it with humility. I'm going to put that here in the example in my response. There's an example to follow. This is humility towards rulers and dedication towards God. And he trusts God. Trusts God no matter what. And God blesses him. He responds to that. He preserves him through the rule of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Cyrus. Daniel's still there. He's still going because he's got the favor of God. And also, he's made fat and of good appearance. He's given wisdom, learning, dreams. He enjoys the favor of knowing God is with him. He chooses to trust him. So that's how I'm going to respond to this passage. I want to trust God no matter what the culture says. I want to be humble towards the authorities, but I also want to be dedicated towards God. And be wise, be salt and light in the world. Be a bringer of truth, but one that speaks in love and speaks with deep respect for the authorities, but knows God is my judge. I'm not living by the rules of Babylon because I'm going to be judged ultimately by the rules of Babylon. I'll live by them in humility unless they conflict with God's law, and then I'm going to go with God instead. God is king. God is king. So I'm responding to this by saying, yep, God is my judge. I'm going to live for him despite culture. In this, if you can make the response section as specific as possible, it's helpful. So with this coronavirus pandemic going on at the moment, and this culture of fear and of hopelessness and of frustration and anger and, oh, why has this come upon us? I'm going to trust God. I'm going to humbly obey the authorities, and I'm going to trust God that actually he's in control, and he will sustain us. He will give us his food, which is different from the food of the culture. I'm going to trust God for his sustenance, for his favor. And whenever I lack wisdom, I'm going to go to him as the God of wisdom, because he has plentiful wisdom and he gives generously. It's what the book of James says. He gives generously without finding fault. So if you lack wisdom, ask him for it. Okay. Oh, Father, I thank you for this book, Daniel. I thank you for that. I thank you that he trusted you, and therefore we have this amazing story to read because it's a story of somebody who trusts God. And who knows what you can do with us when we just say, right, I'm living for you above everything else. I'm living for you. You are my judge. I'm not going with culture. I'm going with God. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to obey you as my highest authority, while also living in humility within the culture I am. Thank you, Lord God, that you've called us into your light and that we can be lights within this culture. Daniel was a light within that culture. They saw something in him 10 times better than the others around him. May we be lights in this culture because we keep trusting you. Amen.